So we're on live stream. Hi, everyone. Over to you, Lynn, for the intro.
Can you just give me 1 second? I just want to make sure I'm not echoing myself and everybody else. Okay, so yes, we are absolutely live on Zoom and on Facebook. I'm going to continue to post the Zoom link on the Facebook page as we go along. But welcome everybody. I'm really excited about this. I'm excited on several different levels. 1, because I want to learn from this, and 2, because the 2 women who are presenting are my colleagues and have a lot to say, a lot of experience between them with 2 very different types of programs. So this is the pre-doctorate webinar you wish you had, Christine and Leah.
Yes.
I don't know how much you want me to say about you, but I've known both of you now for 12 years. The whole 12 years I've been at the ELI at the University of Florida. I've known you both, and we've worked together for a very long time.
Yeah.
So I think at this point, just passing it on to you to introduce yourselves and share your screen. As questions come in on Facebook, we've already got some people there. As questions come in on Facebook, I'll be posting them into the chat and just keeping a watch of them. If there's anything that you want, anything else that anybody on Facebook wants me to do, I will happily try to do it. Okay, so passing it on to you, Christine, Voigt, and Leah Brenneman, not Leah Gator, as her little thing says.
Yes.
Thank you for the intro. I'm going to try to share my screen. We have a presentation that is simple, just to help us stay on track ourselves.
Right.
So that should be opening up. All right. So yes, as Lynn mentioned, we're going to be talking about all of the things we wish we had known or wish we had thought to ask before we started our doctoral programs. So to get started, we'll introduce ourselves a little bit more. Leah, you can go first.
Okay, thanks so much. Thanks Lynn and Liz for setting this up. It's really good for me to think back and present some information. I hope it's helpful. My name is Leah Brenneman. I am the Assistant Director of Recruitment here at the University of Florida English Language Institute. And my degree, I graduated a year ago in August, so August 2022. My degree is curriculum, so it's a education doctorate in curriculum and instruction with an emphasis on educational technology.
All right, and I am at also the English Language Institute here at UF. I am our Student Life and Special Programs Coordinator, and I am in the middle of my EDD right now. I'm doing quals on Tuesday next week, so let's hope it goes well. But future, I'll make it in a program called Teachers, Schools, and Society. And that doesn't really mean much on its own, but the program is designed to help practicing educators look at society and the school culture that they work within and create informed change in your context. All right. So we're going to start with a brief introduction to what is an EDD. What does that mean? How is it different from a PhD? And how do you know if it's the right choice for you in your life? So I will let Leah get started here. If you want to take it over.
Sure, and of course, a lot of people ask what the difference is because a PhD is much more internationally recognized. The what we have here, my chair always said that a PhD is if you want to become a professional researcher and, you know, have a possibly teaching job with a research appointment attached to it. And then the EDD is a researching professional. So everyone in the EDD program in mine had to be employed in a position. It didn't have to be education, but they had to be embedded in a job in which they could do research on some technology aspect in their job. So that is a very basic difference there.
And I did put a little term down below the EDD box, the CPED framework. The program I think both of us were in was established using that framework, and it's definitely a good website, a good thing to check out. They have a lot of programs that follow that same framework, where the concept is you're not looking at the EDD as what some people call a low-end PhD or an easy PhD, because it's not. And that's definitely not the reality of it. It really is focused on more, are you keeping your job and are you a practitioner at the time of doing it, versus being able to take that time and really just focus on research. Right.
Right.
Okay. So how do I decide? Leah, I'll let you start again.
Well, yeah, as I said, when I looked back over my notes and thought about, you know, when I was applying and considering, I started the fall of 2018. And I, you know, before I applied, I took everything into consideration. I'm sure everyone is thinking the same thing, you know, how am I going to have the time? Is my schedule going to be flexible enough, you know, work schedule, home, family, work schedule. And, you know, the position that we are in at the University of Florida, we are faculty, and we do have the benefit of the courses being sort of free, tuition free, I should say. We do have to pay for dissertation credits and some random student fees once in a while. You know, those are, I think, the primary concerns and the considerations that, you know, I went through in my mind. You know, all of these things. I started in 2018. I had a 7-year-old son, very active, and I work, you know, at the ELI, and I travel internationally for several weeks out of the year and go to conferences and things like that. So I really had to think about, how is this very rigorous course going to fit into, you know, my schedule? So, you know, that was my original, you know, list of considerations, and combined with my motivations, I had to balance those things, you know, take my considerations, and then the motivations I had for doing a doctorate. Maybe we all have very similar motivations, but mine were, you know, I travel internationally and I work with, you know, folks from international universities, and I talk to, you know, I work with the State Department, I work with Department of Commerce in many countries. So there is a kind of a recognition factor that I, you know, wanted to have that degree. And, you know, also I'm a lifelong learner and I love to learn, and it was, you know, it's going to be a challenge. And I think that my motivations were, you know, to advance professionally and to professionalize the English Language Institute and, you know, English language teaching industry, you know, those are things that motivated me. And then, of course, expectations, you know, how am I going to manage, how am I going to manage the organization of an online degree? How am I going to manage the tech? How am I going to manage my job and family and all of those things? So I think that's what I had to consider in, this formula before I applied for a doctorate. Christine, you want to talk about your motivation?
Similar, the lifelong learning aspect is really, I think, where I hit big, because I had started doing some reading, and if you look back at kind of leadership and TESOL readings all the way back in the 80s, they were saying there's a responsibility of us as educators who want to be recognized in the field to take that next step and start to professionalize. And I don't know that I agree with that completely. I don't know if the responsibility should be on just us, but I did feel like I was in the right place to do it. And so that was kind of my last push that I needed. Talking to my mentors, especially other people in like the education department and professors on campus, real professors, they all advised me you should quit your job and do a full-time PhD. And that was the only advice I was hearing from anyone. So luckily there were people like Leah who had already started when I was taking it on, and our director, Megan Forbes, they were kind of my push that said, no, you can do it. It is humanly possible to keep working and do the degree at the same time. Without that advice, I probably would have had to quit. But that is also, like Leah, where the funding comes from, that you're working at the time. And I did have an expectation that this would really further my professional learning in a way that I hadn't been able to seek out just on my own through free things. And it just is that next step, the next level. So I think it was very useful, and I'm really glad I made the decision despite all the struggles. One thing that we wanted to point out, I know in Dr. Vogel's talk last month, he mentioned student attrition with the PhD. And so Leah and I, after hearing that, really wanted to look into EDD student attrition, how much that is a thing. So we did find some research that showed there's even more for EDD students. It's even more complicated to complete the actual program. But we didn't personally share that experience. When we were preparing for this, we were talking about, I had a cohort that started, I think, at around 24, and we're still right now at the end of it. I think there's still 19 of us left. So that's pretty good rate for me.
Yeah, likewise, my cohort started at 25 and only 2 or 3 didn't finish the course. From what I remember is they had to take a job in a different state and had to travel and move and, maybe different responsibilities. So it wasn't, the matter of they didn't want to do it or couldn't. It was, yeah.
So I do think some reflection on the program itself, how much support you're getting.
Yeah, I was thinking.
Right. What we're going to get into is, can you actually do it? How do you do it? Is it possible? Because we all have lots of things we're trying to juggle if you decide to do a job embedded EDD. So we had some questions that Leah asked her cohort. She sourced from her cohort. So
yeah, we were brainstorming together, trying to remember back to when we were applying in 2017, the panic of, gosh, I'm kind of old. Is everyone going to be younger and right out of their masters and smarter? And how in the world am I going to pass statistics when the last math class I took was, I don't know how many decades ago, so that was a big concern personally. And, how can I handle all of this? It is when I applied, my professors, my advisor and another professor who started my program sent me their book to read. They said, oh, by the way, read this book on, the rigor and, how to do an online doctorate. And then, that was a little, Yeah, it was kind of scary when they handed that over, just to emphasize that it was the same rigor and the same responsibilities as a PhD, really. And then, of course, how will I find the time and energy? That is something that we talked about a lot. And in my course, again, it was curriculum and instruction with an emphasis on educational technology. In my cohort, you know, we were together and we really were working to really bond. You know, we met as like in our orientation weekend, we all met together and kind of imprinted on each other and got to know each other. And then when we moved to the online space, we created study groups and we had writing groups. And so, you know, we back channeled, we had a communication channel on Facebook group where we would, you know, chat together and we would make ourselves Zoom. So that is how I made my way and found the time to, you know, to make it through the program. And now I want to back up and say that my program was intended to be online completely, but with an orientation in person on campus, and then like a summer institute, the second or the first summer after it started. And then we were supposed to defend in person. But when the pandemic hit, we weren't able to meet in person, and we were then defending our quals and our dissertation online. So that had changed over the pandemic.
Similar for my program, it was intended to be online. All the classes were online, but with a summer institute for each of the years when we were doing coursework. So we ended up, out of I think 3 years of that timeline, we had 2 of them online, and then we were actually able to all meet in person finally that last summer, which was outstanding because you're with a group of 20 people that you've been working so closely with for years, and you finally get to meet each other. It was really
great.
nice.
Yeah.
But echo everything Leah said. My addition is we came up with ask lots of stupid questions. So make sure you're asking every single stupid question you can think of, because there is a cohort to support you, and there's lots of campus resources that you can rely on.
Nice.
Right.
All right. So how did we survive? Well, a lot of those things we just mentioned. Campus resources, depending on where you decide to go, they are still accessible online for the online programs. It just takes finding them. They aren't always given to you. I think I was lucky in my program did give us a lot of those resources and directed us to them, but I know people who did not have that experience and they were left to fend for themselves a little bit more. And I think the cohort makes a difference. Our programs, both Leah and I, they were designed in the cohort model.
Right.
I would 1000% recommend that model. If you're looking at different programs and you see one that has it and one that doesn't, having a cohort of people going through with you, doing the same classes, and staying with you that whole time really made a difference in feeling supported by my peers and knowing when I was struggling, I had someone I could talk to who knew exactly what was happening. And then organizational strategies, I think Leah's better at this than I am. So.
Well, yeah, I made a list of adaptive strategies that I used during my program. You know, like Christine said, the campus resources were given to us. We had, introduction to our librarians. We have research librarians for every department here at UF. So we were able to communicate with them. They presented to us and they are a lifeline. So definitely one of the best resources. My program is in educational technology. So we were a bunch of tech nerds and we all worked together to come up with every hack possible to make it easier to, record interviews and to transcribe interviews and to do all of the things that tech is helping us do, in our research for our dissertation. So again, the cohort, my group, we all worked together and tried these things out. Then of course you're going to have the conversations when you start immediately with the technology, you know, the kind of, you know, citation management and your journal management and those things. So those conversations happen at the beginning, and you need to try those things out as soon as you can and get one established to carry you through your whole entire program. Other things on my list. So Christine and I came up with, we became champions at blocking out noise and notifications. You've got to turn off your email, turn off your phone. And, you know, when you're studying or writing, definitely a strategy to keep focused. And then personally, to save my life, I did subscribe and save with Amazon. I don't know if you're familiar with that service, but I ordered every single thing. So I would, you know, help in my personal life by not having to go to the store as much. That was my key organizational strategy right there. And, you know, other things on our list. Another campus resource, sorry, it's kind of out of order, but another campus resource is here at UF, we have a great Office of Graduate Professional Development, and they offered live webinars and then recordings you can watch later of like every step going through your doctorate. You know, I watched the ones on how to do a literature review, you know, 100 times. And you know, can watch that. And there's, yeah, I'm sure in fast speed. And then there's a dissertation office here at UF. They're open 24/7, you know, emergency hotline if you need help formatting your dissertation. You know, so those resources really helped my organizational, you know, how I can organize and manage the whole program.
Great.
So we do want to take, we've been talking a lot about the coursework versus the dissertation versus goals. We do want to just kind of briefly explain a little bit about what each of those sections of the process was like for us. So coursework for me, I think was more, not difficult, way more time consuming than I expected it to be. You know, I was like, I'm good at being a student. I've done this a lot of years in my life, but it took way more time than other things have done, way more than my master's degree, much more than, of course, bachelor or doing professional development. It was a lot of time, so much reading, so much writing, but very important and very useful to my day-to-day job. And a lot of that's because, and I think Leah said the same thing, there's a broad spectrum of people who are in these programs. So in mine, I had principals, I had administrators, I had people who were just teachers, people who were working for administration at private schools, like all kinds of things. I was the only person doing ESL at all and higher ed at all. So we were able to really tailor it to what our exact passion and focus was. So that was very nice. Anything else on that, Leah?
Right. So my coursework, yeah, also more time consuming and a lot more writing. And right out the gate, we had a research paper that we had to do original research for, and we had our, you know, professors mentor us through that process. So it was so helpful. But, you know, in the beginning, the courses were, you know, building theory, and learning the content, education, the, you know, history of educational technology, you know, educational theory, all of these things. But also we, you know, made every homework assignment was individualized to our job. So like Christine, my cohort was filled with educators, many of them were instructional designers, educators, and I was only one working in the English Language Institute. There was one working in an EAP program, but we had folks from the law school, folks from medical, all across the spectrum. So every single homework assignment that we had, we could focus on our own job, customized to our specialization. And yeah, I think that was it. Now, when Christine and I were speaking about the differences of our programs, we both had introductory coursework. And then in my program, we finished the coursework and then we did our qualifying exams after that. And then we started writing the prospectus for the dissertation from the quals writing. And it was a little bit different for Christine.
Yes. So mine, they have very specific, and I think it's different than a lot of programs. So they have, our prospectus has to be developed in order to get to quals. So to get here, I had to have my whole research proposal methods, analysis techniques, and my full lit review done before I could even say, hey, committee, here you go. So it took a lot longer for me to get to quals, but the good thing is now I do have a good third of it already ready before I even go into it.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's great. And I know there was another difference that I thought was interesting when Christine and were talking about it. In my program, we could choose if we wanted to do quantitative or qualitative or mixed. And Christine has a different experience.
Yeah. So that was another thing. And I didn't know this, but this is on their website. It is qualitative research. That is all we are supposed to do, all we can do. So that's another thing to look out for when you're choosing a program. Is, are they putting those kind of requirements on you? I'm fine with it because I like qualitative research and that's what I was going to do anyway. But there were a couple of, especially the science teachers in my program, who were a little bit sad to hear that they couldn't do statistics in their final dissertations, or at least not very much of it. So check that out.
Yeah.
And then dissertation, I haven't gotten here yet. So Leah's going to talk about this part.
Well, yeah, so I took the writing from the qualifying exams and wrote a prospectus, saying I'm going to be using this framework. I'm going to be using this methodology. I'm going to be doing this and this and this. So it was, I really don't think we did as much of the literature review that Christine said she did. So how we survived, how my cohort got through the dissertation writing process was together. So we made it a point, we would set a time, Thursday nights and like Saturday afternoons, we would set up a Zoom time, and we would all get online and we would turn off our cameras and mute our microphones, and we would write for an hour. And then at the top of the hour, we would sign in and check in with each other. And if we had questions about, what the professors were expecting from this assignment, or how we should write, or what this thing means. So that was like an extra 5 or 6 hours that we made ourselves write together. And that was just, it was life-saving. Dissertation writing, couple of things, you get a lot of feedback. I got a lot of feedback from my advisor. There was a certain way that she wanted things to be presented, and, she would, let me know what I was doing great or what was terrible. And I got used to it. I asked for more. It could be perceived as very harsh criticism, but it was so helpful. And then I was asking for more because it absolutely helped me, do this ginormous document. um, that, and then, oh, well, speaking of the chair or the mentor or your advisor, my chair was the person who started our program, and she was the one who chose the chair and the committee for all of my classmates. So it was her deciding who would be, you know, on our committee. And she was very supportive. And she also had the 5 of us that were her mentees meet every 2 weeks to check in and talk about our progress. So she was very hands-on. And like Christine said before, you know, I haven't heard other people saying that across, you know, disciplines. But yeah, I'm very grateful to have a very hands-on chair. I don't know how yours is going that way, Christine.
It's both. I think I had to learn to ask for what I needed. So I am one of those people who I don't do well under pressure, but I tend to wait until the last minute because the pressure makes me do it. But I had to have that conversation with my advisor and say, I need you to make me do these things, hold me accountable to these timelines, because if you don't, you know, get in touch with me, I'm just going to assume I can take more time. So being able to ask for those things and figuring out what you need and then being able to ask for it, I think are very important. So hopefully we keep going for the next year and get that done.
You'll get it done. You can do it.
All right. And then your last point, just, is it really worth all of the effort, all of the struggle, all of the, you know, nights spent in tears, I guess.
Wrinkles.
Yeah, I didn't have gray hair when I started. But we decided, yes, Leah said she's never heard anyone say they regret doing it. And I think that's true. I don't know that I've ever heard anyone, maybe they regret the process a little bit, regret what they chose, but they don't regret doing it.
Right. Right.
Ultimate professional development. It really does help you learn how to, we empathy. It creates empathy. You learn how to feel as a teacher and as an administrator and every other role. You learn how to identify with what might be going on in people's lives outside of what you're seeing. And that was part of my direct coursework, but it was also just experiential. And for me personally, confidence building was the biggest thing. I always had trouble taking compliments or having people tell me anything. It's not that I don't now. I still have imposter syndrome all the time, but I'm learning how to manage it. And I think doing the PhD or the EDD is a really big piece of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely the ultimate professional development, you know, and really building the confidence that you can do some amazing things. Yeah. And really it trains you to be a critical thinker and critical reader. And yeah, along with empathy, I think it helps me understand, you know, how people need more mentoring, how the whole mentoring process works through those, you know, an rigorous academic program like that. So I've been able to, you know, guide others and mentor others, you know, thinking about doing this program or, you know, doing academic reading and things like that. So yeah. What's that?
You're doing that for me. So
yes. Yeah. And I think for me professionally, you know, it's opened doors to professional and scholarly engagement opportunities. I mean, like, just for an example, I am a reviewer for an academic journal, so I can, you know, contribute to my field in some way in that way right now. So that's very exciting for me.
So our final thought, if it is your goal to do this, if you really want to do it, you'll find the motivation when you need it. We both said that being stubborn helps.
Yes.
But we both see that it's been worth it for each of us.
Yeah,
Anything from you?
any questions? Anything that we can address?
We do have our email addresses here, so if you don't want to ask now, you can always email us later.
Please.
But yeah. Oh, and then just a final thing, we have a reading list that Leah put together. This is a beautiful reading list. We'll
Hey.
try to share this out.
Really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, but I'll stop sharing and
So you have quite an audience that's evolved over, a word got out online that this was
Great.
a fabulous presentation. We now have about a dozen folks from, I would guess, at least 3 or 4 continents in our audience. So please, I want to open this to completely relaxed, informal questions for these wonderful presenters. Oh my gosh. I learned so much, and I was going right back to my own doctoral experience, which is very positive. And that whole networking and bonding and the balance with life. I was a single mom with a little kid, and I had so much support, and it changed my life. I mean, I didn't even know that I needed this stuff. And then it came to me, and I was then giving it to other people. So that community thing where you're getting and you're giving is so powerful. And I thank you so much. I'm going to shut up so that others can speak. Martina, good evening to you. We have Dr. Mansour, Nasreen Sabat, Abdulaziz, Restituta, Oksana, Riham, Theodore, Gada, Julio, and I don't know who else is here. So fire away, guys. Anything is.
I did just start looking through the chat to find some of the questions that were in there. I saw that Damon asked about advisors. So I know this is not true of everyone. My advisor was assigned, and at the time it came around to quals, they said, here's the person who will chair your committee. That chair has helped me find the committee members. And I think this comes out of the fact that most people in our program were not familiar with the UF campus community necessarily. So instead of leaving them to just search online and pick random people, they did say, we think based on the topic you want to do this, these are the correct people to be on your committee. That was my experience. I know that's definitely not what everybody goes through.
Yeah, and my chair assigned everyone in my cohort an advisor based on quantitative methods, qualitative methods, or mixed methods. So the chair was, that was their methodology, their chosen methodology when they do research. So that's how we were assigned. And then by the content, our job description, she tried to align us kind of with people, the K-12 chair, and the higher ed chair in my cohort, my instance. Yeah, so she asked if she told me who she was going to be asking to be on my committee, and she asked if those people were okay or not okay or whatever. So it was great. It was kind of a mutual thing.
Thank you both so much. I'm going to jump in with a question from Facebook. And a question that's been asked a couple of times is, what kind of funding opportunities are there on an Ed.D program as opposed to a PhD program? So are there assistantships available? How does that work? Or at least in your experience?
I guess, so I know when I was researching, I was looking at, and I think Leah had a similar experience. I was looking at programs all over. Mm-hmm. I did not come across an EDD program that provided funding through assistantships, through graduate teaching or anything like that. And I'm not unhappy that I stayed at UF, but we do get an employee educational benefit where they pay for the majority of our degree program if we're at the same university where we're employed for meeting certain requirements. So that was also a big piece in me deciding to do my degree at the same school where I work. But it's also an awesome program, so it worked out for me.
And it's all online. So my cohort, everyone got in-state tuition regardless of where they were. So that's a question to ask. If you're going to do an entirely online program, they may have an in-state tuition benefit for everyone. And then a lot of my cohorts, because they were employed by other universities or schools or research institutions, their workplace would give them a certain percentage towards tuition. So that would be another thing, you know, check with employer to see if there's any kind of education benefit.
Okay. Thank you. I think that answers one part of the question. The other part was very specific, though. It came from one of our colleagues in Pakistan, and he's interested in finding out. He says he has 15 years of teaching experience and has done some research, and he's still trying to figure out whether to go down the EDD route or the PhD route. I know you both came in with very similar numbers of years of teaching experience and research experience. What would be the big selling point of an EDD for him?
Well,
جو مثلا فطور فطيرة وعسل وزعتر ومش عارفة.
sorry, was that a question? Well, like we said in the beginning, we really went down the list of those things, you know, put those in balance. For me, it was the fact, and for Christine also, you know, people encouraging us to do the PhDs. They don't have online PhDs at the University of Florida College of Education. So I had to be online. So I had to be looking at the EDDs. So, and like we said, depending on what your motivation, what your goal is, if you are intending to become a professor and teach and have a research appointment, you know, it may be better to do the PhD, but if you are job embedded and you want to do research, if you want to stay in English language teaching, you know, I would recommend, you know, doing the EDD. But again, there's so many factors you have to consider in that question.
And I'll say, as a, you know, as an educator, at the time I started, I was teaching. I was mainly a classroom instructor, and the thought of not doing that after having done it for so long, that was really hard to accept. So when all of my mentors were telling me you need to quit and do a full-time PhD, that's the better way to do it, I just, you know, I had to push back on that because I did not want to quit my job to do that. It was something I wanted to pursue, but not if it came at the expense of, you know, what I was really loving that I was doing at the moment.
Yeah. I live in Virginia, and I'll tell you that outstanding, our audience here is non-native speakers of English, scholars for the most part. Most of our people, about 20 new people have come in. There's a lot going on in Virginia now for outstanding applicants to doctoral level, EDD, PhD, to be engaged with the public school system. So these new doctoral candidates come in, their English is fine, they've checked all the boxes. They basically get a free ride at some of these universities in Virginia because of their expertise in another cultural context. And it is needed in the public schools now because we have so many in Virginia, we have so many new immigrants and refugees and so on. And the schools are screaming. So the universities and the K-12 school, public schools are pairing up in order to provide the kind of expertise that's needed, and is simply not something that a native speaker of English from the US who, you know, was born and raised in the US would have. So for that audience that we have, I wanted to be particularly encouraging because it's a good time to be applying for a doctoral program in the US. And there are other countries you can get a PhD in EDD, but that's my experience. Yeah. Huida wants a free PhD or a free master's. Yeah. I don't know of one. Do you? Damon, you raised your hand. Yeah. He's too polite.
Yeah, first, what a wonderful presentation. Thank you. So many things to think about and to do. And I applaud you both for going through with it and sticking with it. A couple of things. One, you talked about stupid questions, and my saying is the only stupid question is the one you don't ask. So if you walk away with any stupid questions from anywhere, it's your own fault. The second thing is, when you were talking about why you were doing this, and one of you talking about traveling overseas and everything else, I think it's really important. As a relo, I saw, and I always encouraged as many of the women as I could to go on for their PhD, because otherwise they would be so left behind, they wouldn't even be considered for things, and to be taken seriously. It was really important. And a lot of them thank me still today for that. But the last thing I was wondering, does it make a difference where you get your degree? I mean, does it matter the university or the program? Have you found that that's an issue anywhere?
I know I had conversations with people in my cohort who, a few of them, myself included, did our master's degree and are now doing our doctoral in the same school. And there have been, I've heard, people talking about you shouldn't do the same school, just even that part of it. So even more than just where it is, but having things that match. But we have the professor that leads my program is a triple gator. So she did all three of her degrees here at UF, and is very well known. And so I don't know if it matters as much where the school is, but I think the quality of the program matters a lot. So really making sure you're going into a program that's going to meet your needs and be designed in a way that's going to help you achieve what you want to achieve. I think that's more important than what I've experienced, where people see a certain place on your resume. But other people might have had a different experience with that. I don't know.
Yeah, one reason I ask that is because when people are looking to do a PhD, they're always thinking, oh, I have to go to, the Harvards and the Yales and the Cambridges and the, all of these other things, but those aren't necessarily going to give you what you really need, or they're not necessarily the best for you. So that was one reason I was asking that.
I completely agree with your ideas there. Yeah.
So not really 100% related to that question, but something that I think some of the people who jumped in later missed was a question that came up on Facebook, which is about support in terms of like writing and putting together all the different pieces for your final EdD proposal or prospectus and paper. We had a couple of people ask, where do you get support for that, like in terms of writing?
The writing skills. So we have, Leah mentioned the Office of Graduate Professional Development that we have at our university that was extremely helpful. But I know in both of our programs, when we were talking, they did classes that were directed toward developing those reading, yes, and writing and research skills. In my cohort, in my group of students, there were so many different types of people. So there were some who are already publishing researchers, but then there were some people who are still they feel themselves in their own reflection very delayed by the fact that they were once high school dropouts and then went back and had to do all of that later and never really developed those writing skills in the same way that other people had the opportunity to. So the program provided a lot of support in terms of meeting you where you needed to be met. And I think that's how a lot of programs are, where they're going to try to catch you up to speed. And I also noticed there were a lot of little secret assignments that were built into all of our coursework, where, over time, these different writings you were doing in different classes would be the pieces that you put together at the end. So I think that's encouraged in a lot of programs. But ability should not stop you. I saw a question in the chat about age. Age should not stop you. We had people who were in their late 60s in my program, and we had people who were in their early 20s, and everybody has the same ability to get it done. Do you have any other?
Oh, yeah, Megan has her hand up.
Yes.
I would
I-
just follow up with what Christine said as far as age goes, is it really depends on what your long-term goals are and, where you are in life. And so, I did something very similar. I did my PhD at UF, like Christine and Leah did, while I was working here full time. So I had the benefit of being fully funded. So it didn't matter how old I was when I started, right? I wasn't using it to launch a career. I was doing it because I wanted to enhance my own career and have other opportunities open for myself in the program. I think if you are quitting your job to pursue a PhD, you really need to think long and hard about what your opportunities will be when you finish it, and look very closely. It doesn't really matter what university you do the program at, so long as it has the support you need, and look carefully at the funding opportunities, because those funding opportunities and sort of the guidance you get in applying to positions once you're done will make a big difference in where you study, if you do an ED or a PhD, and when you start. I think I know many colleagues who were not able to start their doctoral degrees until after their children are older. And that's a wonderful reason to be able to finally do something that you can dedicate your time and energy to, if you are not a Wonder Woman like Leah and Liz and able to do both at the same time. So I don't think it's age. I think it's what is your goal and what are the financial realities of what you're trying to do.
Damon?
I hate to be the one that keep asking questions, but since one of your programs is pretty much online, I was wondering, does your institution, or do you know of other institutions that have joint PhD or EDD programs with universities overseas? That might be an interesting thing at some point. I know when I was working as a relo, I was always helping universities that had university linkage programs. A couple of times I got them to set up a joint program. Do you know of any?
Great idea.
Yeah, that's beyond my expertise, but if anyone else knows of some, I'd love to hear about that also.
Perhaps you could try and instigate one or start one with your university and another overseas. Not above your pay level to start something like that.
And we have a very international community in front of us right now, just to mention it. If there are those in our audience who are interested in such collaborative relationships with the University of Florida or any other university, it would be a chance to take advantage of this network. We even have people still coming in, Lynn.
I know. I think there may have been some timing
Yes.
things, but it's good to see people come in, because once you're here, it's easier for us to get the link to you for the recording, so you'll be able to watch it later.
Yeah.
And it's also available on our Facebook page. Are there any more questions? As I look at the time, we are drawing to a close, and I just want to make sure that if anybody else has any questions or something that they want to jump in and say, that time is available to them. Oh, Megan again.
Megan,
Hello.
Hi.
How are you doing? Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Hello, Mohammed.
Yeah,
How are you?
I'm calling. I'm good. I'm good. Thanks so much. I'm calling from Senegal, West Africa. I
Yay.
wanted to know. I just wanted to know if it's possible to have a TESOL scholarship for a PhD in the USA.
Oh,
Yes, it's possible.
Mm.
yeah. There is a very big question. Are you on our Facebook page, Mohamedou? No.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So there are links. There are links on our Facebook page to possible scholarship opportunities, and we can always add. We will continue to add more. So just keep watching that space.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for the information.
You're welcome. Thank you, Megan. You started saying something and then we got distracted.
I was just going to say that, when I started my program, my PhD program, we did not have the cohort opportunity that Leah and Christine talk about. And as I've seen other faculty pursue their doctoral degrees, I'm a huge fan of having a cohort, a formal cohort where a chair and your committee are actually walking a group through at the same time with the same set of coursework and expectations and dates and deadlines. And I've really seen it help folks complete PhDs and EdDs. There's far fewer ABDs with a cohort than I think there are with individuals trying to go it on their own.
Okay, I just had a question about Facebook, so I'm just going to do a little bit of administration here. We don't have a Twitter feed, Abdulaziz. We don't have a Twitter account. I'll share the link for Facebook here so that you can join our Facebook group or LinkedIn group, but we don't use Twitter. So sorry, just to jump in with that. Were there any other questions before I come off Facebook?
Lynn,
Yes.
we do have a WhatsApp group. If people
Oh,
could get on Facebook, they could do it on WhatsApp.
okay. I'll share all those in a minute.